wasn't feeling well yesterday, and he wasn't able to be with us in service last night, but he had a good sleep and a good hot shower, and he's feeling some better today, so we're glad to have him back.
Thank you, Dr. B. Hey, good morning, folks. Well, I guess it's still morning. I guess it's not afternoon yet. Well, I'm excited to talk to you guys about ISO Connect, and I have talked to some of you in our lobby about this already, so apologize if you hear this twice, but we are very excited about this program. So what is ISO Connect? This is something that we had developed based on popular demand in the US. We had a number of people interested in ISO who also wanted to use the curriculum to teach their small groups, to run schools of ministry, and to run their own schools with the curriculum. And so ISO Connect is designed for schools of ministry, churches, small groups, so that they can use this in a customized way. And the pricing model of ISO Connect allows large groups of people to take ISO together at a small flat rate. And I believe it's 27 Rand in the South Africa. So thanks to ISO Connect, groups can gather together and have their own ready-made curriculum that they can use at their own discretion. And because ISO is an online school, many students find it beneficial to study together in groups and have that accountability and community, because with an online school, as you're probably aware, you have very little of that. You don't have direct interface with the instructor. So to take advantage of this program, a group leader must purchase any course at iso.org/connect and add seats for each potential member. The pacing and management is at complete discretion of the leader, so you can choose to gather together as often as you like, as little as you like. You can choose to use the videos or just the outlines, however you'd like to teach it. Additional seats can be added as needed, so there's really no downside to purchasing a course as an ISO Connect course, and if you decide you may have a bigger group later, you can always add more seats. What this also means is that since all ISO courses have lifetime access, if you decide to teach a course in a small group or whatever the setting, you can teach it again next year with a different group of students and simply add seats. So you don't have to pay for it twice. All students in the group have full access to the course and quizzes, just like any other ISO course, so they can earn a certificate as they choose. I'm going to show you a quick video about this. It explains it more articulately than I can.
By now you've learned that ISO is the premier online Bible school with dozens of courses, hundreds of hours of teaching, and a reach extending to thousands of students all over the world. Now we're excited to announce ISO Connect. ISO Connect is a revolutionary new system that extends ISO's powerful learning resources to groups of any size. Now families, Sunday school classes, or small groups can study ISO courses together in a group setting. This exciting announcement means that now with ISO Connect, your organization can offer its own customized school of ministry. Here's how it works. A group leader purchases any ISO course at full price. Then all other students in the group purchase the course for only $20 each. Everyone pays a one-time $25 fee to become registered as a full-fledged ISO student with website access and certificate eligibility. By adapting the familiar friends and family membership model into the ISO learning experience, ISO Connect makes all of ISO's resources available to groups of any size at an amazingly low price. Sign up today for ISO Connect.
Now, I believe Dr. B already mentioned that we do adjust our rate based on the minimum wage in local areas. And so South Africa actually does receive a 90% discount from our normal price. So we do try to keep this affordable and accessible to everyone. So what that will look like in Rand, sorry, the text is a little thrown off there, but what that looks like in Rand is 27 Rand per person for each additional seat that you add, and then the one-time registration fee of 34 Rand, which as I've spoken to many of you already is one time. So to access ISO Connect, I don't know if you can read that, but I highlighted it for you. There is a drop-down arrow on our homepage. So if you visit iso.org, there's a drop-down arrow where it says ISO Connect, and you simply click on Purchase. And we'll take you to an identical site to our main site, except these courses give you the opportunity to add those seats. So our same course catalog is available. These are simply the ISO Connect versions. So here I've clicked on one of those, and again, you may be able to read this from your seat. but I have highlighted where it gives you the opportunity to select a number of students, including yourself the first time. So when you see here, we have 109 Rand is the base price of the course, and then 219 Rand is what that would be with 5 students in the course. So here are some common questions. How can our church or school cover the cost of registration? So if you decide you would like to offer this for free for students in your church or your school of ministry, you can choose to buy gift cards on our site and cover that for them. What about students who don't have internet access? I'm actually familiar with this. I come from an area of the U.S. that still doesn't have internet access. And so you can structure your church or school in a way that gives access to everyone, gives everyone the videos. So maybe you meet together weekly or monthly and show the videos to the whole course, print out the outlines for everyone. How do I structure my small group around ISO curriculum? So 2 models that we've seen work in the U.S. are to either gather together and watch the videos, or watch the videos for homework and maybe print out the outlines for all of your students and gather together and discuss them. Take the quizzes together, take them for homework. So there's, again, it's entirely at your discretion how you choose to do this and at your pace. Can I use the same account from semester to semester? And the answer is, again, yes. You have lifetime access, so you can choose to rewatch the same course videos as many times as you choose. So ISO Connect is empowering families, small groups, churches, and schools of ministry to earn a quality biblical education at an affordable price. And we'll be more than happy to help you set up today in the lobby. So, thank you. Absolutely.
So we're on now. There we go. We're ready to get started again. I'm not sure if there's any more in there. Pastor, is everyone cleared out of the hall, you think? Okay. We're going to do 2 more presentations. One is shorter than the other, and so we think that we're going to get us out on time, well, actually early today. So that is our hope and our plan. What I want to talk about in this first after lunch session, so this is the session that you cannot go to sleep in because it's the most tempting session to go to sleep in, right? After we're full. And so I'll give you 1 pass. So after your neighbor nudges you once, that's it, okay? So 1 short nap for everyone is allowed right after lunch, right after our food. So I want to talk about planning your best year. Now, this really applies mostly to pastors and to church staff that are involved in planning the church calendar. It's amazing what you can find out about a church from their calendar. As a matter of fact, I make a promise everywhere I go. Yeah, Pastor Chuck said that I promised one group $10,000 if they could tell me their mission statement, and I knew they couldn't. It was so long and it was so buried, I knew no one understood it, including the pastor, and I was exactly right. So it wasn't even a gamble for me. I knew that they couldn't do it. Well, I also tell pastors whenever as a consultant in that particular role, that I guarantee them that I can look at their calendar and tell them how many people their church will add to their membership that year, how much they will grow or how much they will not grow based upon their calendar. And it's the honest truth. And I'm not saying this to be bragging, but I've never missed. I can get within a margin. I may say 5 or 10 or 50 or 100, or I may say 0, because I don't see anything there except maintenance. And if all you see on a calendar is maintenance, then you know the church will probably look exactly the same a year from now, maybe decline if some good members pass away or move away. And so I can look at a calendar and see if the church is perched for growth based upon the things they have scheduled on their calendar. And you would be amazed at how many churches only plan for maintenance, the maintenance mode. So we're going to talk about planning your best year. In order to plan for your best year, you need 3 things. You need a vision, you need measurable goals with deadlines, and you need a calendar to get you there. So let's start with the first one. The first, you need, some of you are taking pictures of this, so I'll go ahead and give that back to you. You need 3 things. You need a vision. You need measurable goals with deadlines. And you also need a calendar. Pastor Chuck, would you move this for me, please? Thank you. It's a barrier for me. Some people like pulpits. I don't use them. It's just more of a barrier for me. Thank you very much. So we're going to start with the book of Habakkuk. How would you pronounce that word, Habakkuk? Habakkuk. Habakkuk. Very similar then, okay? So we're starting with the book of Habakkuk, 2 and 2, and it says, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so he may run who reads it. So notice there are 3 parts to this instruction. First of all, you have to write it down. Secondly, it has to be easy to understand. Make it plain. And then secondly, you have to give it away. Or thirdly, you have to give it away so someone can run with the vision after they have read what you've written down. So I am a Pentecostal, but I went to a Presbyterian college. One of the colleges I went to was a Presbyterian college. And they picked on me a little bit because I was the only full gospel person in the classroom. And I remember a story that always stood out in my mind. There was a young man who pastored a Presbyterian church. He was very, very nice, overly nice, actually. But this guy came in one day aggravated, and I'd never seen him out of sorts like this. And he was just kind of kicking around and pushing things around. He was so aggravated. And I said, what is wrong with you? And he said, well, a woman in my church has been watching Jerry Falwell. Now, I don't even know if you know who he is. He is a Baptist preacher that had a school and a large church in the state of Virginia. He's passed away now. This has been many years ago. And so I said, well, is that so bad that a Presbyterian watched a Baptist on TV? He said, no, you don't understand. He said, I was watching Jerry Falwell, and he said, I saw him giving accolades to people who had donated large amounts of money to their college. And I saw this name scrolling down, and the largest donation came from a woman in St. Louis, Missouri, that goes to my church. And he said, he saw the name and thought, surely it can't be the same person. So he calls her on the phone, and she answers the phone, and he says, this is your pastor. She said, I thought you might be calling me. He said, is that you who gave $1 million to a Baptist university? Now, understand this vision. Jerry Falwell's vision was so simple that he was giving away. This is what it was. Help me put preacher boys on the field. That's it. That was the whole slogan. Help me put preacher boys on the field. Now, that's all he was asking for, is for people to help him put preacher boys on the field. What he was doing was raising scholarship money for freshman ministers. But if he would have said, we're raising scholarships for freshmen, no one would have given. But because his phrase was written out so plainly that everyone bought into it, help me put preacher boys on the field. And it touched the heart of this Presbyterian woman. And so she had given him $1 million for that scholarship fund, and her pastor was upset because they could have used that $1 million in the Presbyterian church. And he says to her, why in the world would you give $1 million to a Baptist college and you're a Presbyterian? And this was her answer. Because he gave me a vision and you didn't. That was the answer. He gave me a vision and you didn't. Write the vision, make it plain on tablets so he who reads it can run with it. And guess what? This Presbyterian lady ran with it. Help me put preacher boys on the field. So the mission doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be wordy. It just has to work. So the instruction of Habakkuk was, or the Lord to Habakkuk, is write it down and make it plain. So the first thing you need is a simple mission, a plainly written mission. Now, if you don't write it down, it will never come to pass. Because every time you repeat it, you will repeat it differently. So you write it down, and I say put it on the walls. So I obviously don't read Afrikaans, so I don't know what all of these say, but I have a saying that I like when I go to churches, is that I want to walk through a church and understand the church from the walls. So I ask them, are your walls talking? I want your walls to talk to me. If I am a guest, we talked yesterday, or maybe today, about guest culture and home culture. Well, if I'm a first-time guest, I want the walls to tell me all about this church. I want to see pictures of happy people. If I have teenagers, I want to see pictures of teenagers somewhere on the wall. If I have children, I want to see pictures of happy children somewhere on the walls. If I'm a guest, that's going to make me want to stay because the walls are talking to me. So the same thing with the vision. When you get the vision, write it down. Post it on the walls. Talk about it until someone is running with it. So the second thing that you have to have is not just a vision, but measurable goals. Now, I don't know if they have these here in South Africa, but some churches use something that looks kind of like this. And basically, they put them on the walls out by the front door, and it tells you how many people came to church and how much money was in the offering. Now, I don't think that was a real one. That's just a picture I found on the internet, because I think 296 people would give more than $690. So anyway, that's just an idea. But what they are measuring is they are measuring money, and they are measuring attendance. And one of the things that happens, we talked about this in the previous session that I taught. One of the things that happens is if that is all we measure, that is all we value, that is all we're looking for. People to attend and give money. And after a while, that gets a little old. When people don't have a mission, they don't have a vision, they're not prompted to win souls. After a while, just showing up and giving money is just not enough. People get weary with that. They get tired with that. So one of the things that I try to get pastors to rethink is the difference in their average attendance and their active attendance. Now, what is the difference? Average attendance is how many people are coming every week. Active attendance is how many people are actually in the church if all of them came at the same time. So how many people do we really have? How many people, if everyone showed up at one time, how many people do we really have? And so if pastors are looking at their active attendance, that number is usually much higher than the average attendance, and that is the number they need to be talking about. That is the number they need to be focused on, not telling people what their average is. That tells me nothing. And you know what? It means nothing. Because the fact that because every week, at least in the U.S., every week it's a different crowd. Everyone's not coming every Sunday. So you have people that are working on Sunday, and people that are traveling on Sunday, and people on holiday. So it's never the same crowd. So your average attendance tells me nothing about your church. I want to know how many people call that church home. So if I'm doing that, I'm measuring my active roles. Now, I talked about this earlier, so you're seeing this for the second time, except I added one thing. Okay? So I said that you have to have measurable goals. So what is something that I can measure, incrementally measure? First of all, how many salvations? So this would be my goals for this year. More salvations than last year. That is my goal. So if we won 100 people to the Lord last year, I want to win 101 people to the Lord this year. So that is my goal. My goal is more baptisms than last year. So regardless of how many people we baptize in water, I want more people baptized in water this year. So that drives me. If these are my goals, this is what I'm always pushing for. I'm always working toward these goals. I want more people serving. That's the one that I added. More people serving in the church than last year. So how many people of the active attendants are actually serving in a ministry? Because now I want more people serving than last year. I want higher attendance on Easter. We talked about that already. It's the biggest Sunday of the year. So what is the biggest sports day of the year in South Africa? Would it be a big rugby tournament or ours would be Super Bowl Sunday. That is when the best football teams play each other. Or we would have March Madness for the basketball teams. So what would be the biggest sporting event in South Africa? Okay, so whatever you said. Curry Cup? The Curry Cup? Final. Okay, so Easter Sunday is the Curry Cup final for the church. Okay? That's the big day of the year for the church. So keep that in mind. Thank you. I just never heard of the Curry Cup, and I wanted to make sure I was hearing it right. I love how you roll your R's. I need to learn to roll my R's a little more. The Curry Cup final. All right. I'll work on it. I will work on it. Okay. So then more youth and children than last year. So keep in mind, my goals are simple. So I have a simple vision and very simple goals. And as a pastor of a church that ran thousands of people, these were my goals every year. So I didn't change my goals. I just worked on my goals continually. The last few years that I pastored the church, these were the only goals I ever had. I want more salvations than last year. I told you this story earlier about how the Lord convicted me when I was on that hike, how he convicted me and told me not to bring him any more songs until I bring him sons. That I went home and I worked harder than I've ever worked in my life to win souls for the Lord. And I got my whole congregation involved. We only won 487 people to the Lord that year. And I was so disappointed because I thought we would have so many more than that. But because we won 487 souls, it's much larger than the previous year before the Lord convicted me. So even though we had won 487 souls, I was so disappointed with that low number. But the next year, I pushed harder, and the next year we won 681 people to the Lord. I still wasn't happy because at a church our size, we should have been doing much better. And so I pushed again because this was my goal. By the third year, we won over 800 souls, and it took me 4 years to get over 1,000. So only until my fourth year after that convicting moment did we win 1,000 souls. Now, this is not me traveling. This is not the camp meetings and conventions. This was in the church. These were people that we won in the house to the Lord. So these were people that came and raised their hand and repented, and we put them in discipleship programs. So I was not exaggerating the number or evangelistically speaking. And so these were real numbers. Okay, so keep in mind, these are the goals. So if you have a vision, and I used this vision yesterday, connect with God, others, in the world, this is what these measurable goals would look like. So connecting with God, I'm wanting salvations and baptisms. So I wanted 20% increase was what I was shooting for. Connect with others. These are the people turning in their prayer cards, would be visitor cards. We call them prayer cards. So we give all of our guests a prayer card instead of a guest card, and they give us their prayer requests and their information, so that's what we're doing. Then how many new people joined a life group? How many of you people were active in children's and youth? That is how we connect with others and how we connect with the world, or how many people are serving on teams, whether they be local teams or outreach teams. So this is how we married our goals and our mission statement together, our vision together. So with a simple vision like connecting with God, others, and the world, I'm actually measuring with my goals if I'm actually accomplishing my vision. So it's an easy way to do that. So your goals need to tell you if you're actually accomplishing your vision. Because if your goals are not established under the vision, then you could have lots of goals that you're meeting and still not be accomplishing your mission and vision. Okay? So that's important. So here's step 3, and I apologize for this bumping around. I guess our PowerPoint is just kind of moving around on us on the screen. So the last thing we're going to talk about is how to set up a church calendar. Now let me repeat what I said earlier. I tell pastors everywhere I go that I give them a money-back guarantee that if you'll let me look at your church calendar, I will predict how many people your church will grow by in the next year. And that if I'm not making a bet, usually it's pastors that brought me in to speak, and I tell them, this is what you gave me, so this is my goal too. If I look at your calendar and I miss the number, then I'll give you all of this back. And I tell them that all the time. I've never once had to give it back because I give myself a margin, usually 10 people margin. So it's not a very large margin because I can look at your calendar and it will tell me if your calendar is throwing your church into a maintenance mode, just maintaining what you have, or if your calendar is actually driving evangelism and new people. So I'm going to show you how to set up a calendar for evangelism. Now, I told you that every year I would go on a hike. Now, that's not me. My legs aren't nearly that good. But that young guy, whoever that is, I just took his picture off the internet. So every year around my birthday, I would go on a hike. And that was my time to do 2 things, hear from God and set up the church calendar for the next year. And that's something that I did for many, many years. So in your calendar, when you're calendarizing, the first thing you do, here's what happens to most church calendars. Everybody in the church starts submitting dates, and it fills up the calendar with all kinds of small events. So what we do is we ask everyone to turn in their proposed calendar to the church office. Now, we would call it the executive team. So the youth pastor, the children's pastor, all of these ministers would submit what they wanted on the calendar, but there was no guarantee they were going to get any of it. They were just submitting their request on the calendar because all of those things could only be added after the primary calendar was full, and I'll show you what that looks like. The next thing we did is we got a community calendar. You cannot reach your community if they don't know where you are. You cannot reach your community if they can't see you. So you have to be visible in community events. So the next thing we did is we got a community calendar. We showed up at the festivals. We showed up at we showed up at the parades. I will never forget. Let me tell you one quick story. I went to a Apple Fest festival. It was all things Apple. So it was like apple jelly, apple jam, apple pie, apple cake, apple, everything was apple. And there was about 20,000 people that come to this festival. It was huge. Music and booths and crafts and people selling things all over the place and all kinds of foods all over the place. It was a lot of fun. My wife likes to go to those kinds of things. But when I first arrived, 2 things shocked me. First of all, when I walked in there, there was a band up there playing and singing. And I'm thinking, oh, they must be welcoming us to the Apple Fest. And they're handing out brochures. And the closer I got, I realized I know those songs. They were singing worship songs, upbeat, happy worship songs. And I didn't even realize it till I just assumed it was the festivals band. It was a charismatic church that had bought a booth, and they were handing out brochures, which I took thinking it was the map to the festival. Me and 20,000 other people did that. So I'm just thinking, because you're in this line, in this crowd, and you're taking their brochure, and then I get up there and I read it. It's not a map to the festival. It's a brochure to their church. I'm thinking, wow, why didn't I think of that? I mean, they just welcomed 20,000 people to their church, and they got to hear their band play and sing at the festival. And then I walked through the Apple Fest, and I saw something that I couldn't believe it when I saw it. It said, free prayer and water. Free prayer and water? Well, I was so curious, I just had to go see. It was a Baptist church, and I'm thinking, okay, I know I'm going to get some good water. Let me see what kind of prayer I can get from the Baptist church. And so I went in. I had to stand in a line. When it finally got my turn, they welcomed me into this small tent. It was all free. They handed me a bottle of water, sit me down in a chair, and said, what would you like for us to pray about? Just like that. Well, I'm a pastor, man. I had a lot of things to pray about. So it was like, take your pick. I mean, how long do you have? So I just gave them a couple of prayer requests, and those beautiful Baptist people laid their hands on me and prayed a powerful prayer. It took me by surprise. I walked out of that booth and thought, why didn't I think of that? I mean, here they are in the community where I should have been. They're there because they got the community calendar and I didn't. And I was on the mayor's council. I should have had the community calendar. And it convicted me that we need to get more involved in the community. So you want to have a community festival calendar. This is the earth, and the reason that it is cold in December and hot here in December is because we're on opposite sides of the earth. And we rotate around the sun. And so when it's cold at my house, it's hot here. And when you're having your winter, we are having our summer. As a matter of fact, when I left my house to come here, it was almost 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is, Celsius. Somebody help me there. What would that be, Celsius? It was hot. I can tell you it was very, very hot. And what is that? 32 degrees Celsius. So it was hot. It's summertime at my house right now, and now we're starting to cool off next month, and we will start coming into cold weather. So by Christmas, there will be snow falling and the wind blowing, and it's nice and cold, where here at Christmas, it's nice and sunny. So it's the opposite for us, okay? So guess who designed this calendar? Does anyone know who designed this calendar? God did. This is God's calendar. He designed the seasons. So understand that there is something called organic church growth. Organic means it is naturally going to happen. Naturally going to happen. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. We have to understand, first of all, that in the Bible, there are seasons of harvest that are also spiritual harvests. Now, if you've ever studied this before, you know that the Jewish people celebrate the spring harvest, the feast, and the fall harvest, or the fall feast. Well, did you know that in every church in the world, there is an increase of salvations and baptisms during these feasts? These are holy convocations. Now, we call them the Feast of Israel, but it's not true. They've never been called the Feast of Israel. They're called the Feast of the Lord. He gave the instruction to Israel, but they were never meant for Israel. They were meant for the Lord's people. And so we celebrate this one here. So let me show you what this looks like for us. This would be Good Friday. This would be Saturday. This would be Sunday, the Sunday we call Easter Sunday. So right here is the largest day for salvations in Christendom that falls right here in these fall feasts. And then 50 days later is the day of Pentecost. And in this season, from Easter to Pentecost is one of the highest growth seasons for churches that are growing for winning souls. Now, I don't refer to church growth as moving from one church to another, even though you can grow that way. When I refer to church growth, I'm only talking about one thing: evangelizing the unchurched people, evangelizing unsaved. So the churches that are winning the most souls are doing that from Easter to Pentecost. And you can look at the stats around the world. That is the highest season for winning souls in Christendom. But even if you go to the fall feast, we are now entering that time in the fall feast. And there's another one that I'm going to show you that's not on the feast, but it's also another time that centers around Christ. But in the fall feast, which starts in about October, so September, October is the second time that you will see a spike in people getting saved. Now, there's a spiritual reason for this. It's not something that we have to work at. There is a drawing of the Holy Spirit. These are natural harvest seasons. And God is not just telling us to harvest wheat and barley. This is also the harvest of souls. So churches that understand this principle, they're going to plan to win souls. They're going to strategize to win souls in the spring feast and the fall feast, the autumn feast of Israel as well. So here's the calendar. In this calendar, you're going to see natural growth seasons. Now, notice I've added one, which is December and January. Why would December be a time for people to come to church? Can anyone think of anything important that happens in December that would draw people to church? Christmas. Again, the birth of Christ. So all of these center around spiritual events and events that God sends a special blessing on them. So notice this. You have the April season. This is September or October. Most of the time this overlaps. It usually starts about the end of September and goes into October. And then you have December, which goes to the first of the year. Now, I don't know if you make New Year's resolutions in South Africa, but we do. I don't know that we keep all of them, but most Americans join a gym in January to lose weight from Christmas. And they think that's a New Year's resolution, and they stay in the gym for about 2 weeks, and then they drop off again. So it's same here. Okay, I thought it was probably similar anyway in some places. Well, many people make a New Year's resolution to go to church, to start to church, because they need to get their children involved in church. It is a natural time of growth if churches are ready for it. Now, churches in a maintenance mode, this is not even on the radar. So they don't see this. They don't see any spike in attendance. They don't see any spike in growth. They don't see any spike in people being saved because their church is in a maintenance mode. They're maintaining what they have, and their churches are growing naturally by childbirth and family members, and that's how their churches are growing. But they're not always growing by new converts in the community. So keep this in mind. These are the natural seasons. So you have 3 natural seasons to do. Remember earlier, the last talk I gave you was creating a culture of invite. So what you do, high five your neighbor. Everyone go ahead and do that now. High five your neighbor. All right? Give your neighbor a high five. There we go, Chris. I'll give you a high five. Now, what does that mean? I should be praying for 5 people to come to salvation. I should be praying for 5 people. Now, when am I going to invite these 5 people to come to church? I'm going to invite them in April, September, and December, because that is the most likely time that they will come to church. So I am going to strategize my congregation to pray for them all year long, but now we're going to do, and I call it, I know this doesn't sound very spiritual, but believe me, getting people saved is very spiritual. But this idea doesn't sound very spiritual. I call it an invite campaign, okay? All that means is that I've strategized a plan to invite people to come to the house of God. That's all it means. There's nothing weird about it. It just means that I am strategizing my congregation, mobilizing my congregation to go out and invite their 5 people that they've been praying for all year long. Okay? Now, I'm going to just mention something else quickly here. Notice that in each of these calendars, I have 3 Sundays blocked off. I call that a trilogy. Now, the reason I call it a trilogy is for this reason. If someone attends your church one Sunday, there's a 10% chance they will stay. But if you can get a guest to attend your church 2 Sundays in a row, not 2 Sundays in a month, but 2 Sundays in a row, there's a 50% chance they will stay at your church. If you can get a guest to attend your services 3 Sundays in a row, that goes up to 80%. They're getting more comfortable every time they come in. They're meeting people. They know where to park. They know where to sit. They know where the restrooms are. All of the anxiety is over by now. If you can get someone to come 3 Sundays in a row, there's an 80% chance that person is going to stay in your church. So what we're doing in this season of the year is we're strategizing to invite them to 3 separate events: Palm Sunday, Easter Sunday, and the Sunday after Easter. We're going to do the same thing in the fall and the same thing around the Christmas season. So what we do is we encourage people to build in friends and family days. Now, most people love friends and family days. So what this would look like is Palm Sunday. Bring in the palm leaves, something nice and special to get people there. And then you have Easter Sunday, which is Easter Sunday. Just do Easter the way you do Easter, but follow Easter up with a friend and family day so that you can get that person to come back one more time. By the time they come 3 times, that person of peace that you have located, that you've been praying for, that you've been invited, by the time they come 3 times, there's an 80% chance that they're going to stay in your church. So we create these, what we call invite campaigns. Now, basically, there's the high 5. You pick 5 people. You pray for them every day. You ask the congregation every week, the high 5, are you praying for your 5 people to come to salvation? And then these 3 times a year, you invite them. Now, when I see that on someone's calendar, church calendar, I know they're going to grow. I know that they're going to have new people come into their church because they're strategizing their growth. So what we do, and you don't have to do this, is we create, these are 3 different models here. We create these little invite cards. They look just like business cards. Now, I know we have an evangelist here, so he has a business card. And so evangelists always have a business card. And so you give them something the size of a business card. And it's just, all it does is tells about the event. So this one right here says, come together with City Church. So that's probably their fall campaign. This one right here says Easter extravaganza. So all of these are basically an invitation to come to these 3 Sundays in a row. Now, if you don't get them on the first Sunday, you might still get them twice. You might only get them on the last Sunday, but this is the most optimal time of the year that people that you invite will come to church organically. It's natural church growth, okay? Or maybe we should say supernatural, because it's in the harvest seasons of the Lord, okay? Now, there's secondary growth seasons. We're not going to talk a lot about that, but you can add in things like, you can't read this from there, but this is a baby dedication. This is water baptism. This is a Mother's Day event on Mother's Day. And so what you do on those, this is the children's choir singing, I think, down here. So what you do is you create secondary events that you can also invite people to, because people will come to hear children sing. People will come to a water baptism. So if you're baptizing someone, say, we would like to invite 5 of your unsaved friends. And don't tell them to invite them. Let the church invite them. We actually would send out a formal invitation that looks like a wedding invitation. Very nice and formal and dressy. So you would get something in the mail that looks like you've been invited to a wedding, but it was being invited to a baptism. If the children were singing, I would write a letter from my office that said, we ask little Mary who her favorite people are that she would like to come and hear her sing, and she chose you. Now, we know that Mary's going to be looking for you on this Sunday because she's going to be singing, and I told her I would send this little letter from the pastor. Well, do you think they're going to stay home when Mary chose them out of all the people in the world? No. Mary's 5 years old. They are going to come and hear Mary sing. And so it's just strategizing. It's the culture of invite. So if the children's choir would sing, we would get names from them and invite their friends and family that do not go to church. If someone's being baptized, we would invite their friends and family that do not go to church. As a matter of fact, I had a secretary named Rita that was my secretary at Twin Rivers for many, many years. And Rita got saved because she came to church to watch her friend get baptized. She came to watch her friend get baptized, and at the end of the baptism, we always give a call for salvation. Rita was sitting in the back of the church, did not know the Lord, and after her friend got baptized, a co-worker at work, by the way, so after her co-worker at work got saved or got baptized, we said, if anyone is here tonight that would like to invite Jesus Christ into your heart, we would give a beautiful altar call. Rita got saved that night, became a missionary for 2 years. She got radically saved, went to Guatemala as a missionary for 2 years, and came back, and I hired her as my secretary, and she was a wonderful secretary and still one of my spiritual daughters. But she got saved because we invited her to come and watch her friend get baptized. It works. It's just that simple. It's simple strategies to create the culture of invite. Now we'll close out here with this last slide. This right here is just basically the natural rhythm of the year. So pastors sometimes choose sermon topics or series that are often appealing to unchurched people during this time. So February is obviously the love month. We have Valentine's Day there. And so it's a great month to talk about love. January is a great month to talk about new commitments, fresh starts, all of those kinds of things, brand new seasons. There's January. You get into March. We would get everyone ready for Easter. So March was about evangelism and the need to win the lost. So that was what we tried to emphasize that in March, whether I preached on it or not. That was the emphasis. Obviously, Easter is in April. And then after people got saved in Easter, because we always knew a lot of people would get saved on Easter, I always asked the Holy Spirit to give me a sermon that new converts could really engage with. So I always planned in May to do something on family. Sometimes the Holy Spirit would direct me in a different direction, and I knew I just followed His lead. But I always was conscientious of the fact that there was a lot of new converts in the church, and I needed to give them something they could sink their teeth into. So all this is basically looking at the events of the year, the normal, natural rhythm of the year, and planning church things around that. So did you pick up any ideas or anything from planning your best year ever? Hopefully you got something out of this, and it's something that you can use. All right.